What's up, my know-it-alls? It's time for another episode of Strange New Worlds, specifically Season 2, Episode 2, Ad Astra per Aspera. Talk about courtroom dramas. That's literally the episode we've been waiting for, which is to see the trial of Una Chin Riley. So stick around, but before that, hey, do me a favor. Click the like and subscribe button, please. It helps us have the organic traction in the algorithm, helps people in the interwebs find the show and know that people are actually watching. So you want to invite people to join the Know-It-All Nation? That's how you do it. Also, stick around at the very end. We'll have a great announcement having to do with uniforms. I've been asked online how to get uniforms and whatnot, especially the jackets that I wear, and I'm happy to share that information. The easiest way, obviously, is everybody who joins a certain membership level here on the channel. There is I believe it's called Fleet Officer. That is the level, and it comes with a free uniform of some of the types that I have. And there are various options. I've got the all kinds, but anyway, we'll talk more about that at the very end. So stick around till then. I'll also see about maybe bookmarking down below how you can jump ahead to find more information out about that. But until then, let's jump right into the episode review. Here we go. Star Trek episode Strange New Worlds, episode 2 of season 2, Ad Astra per Aspera. I tell you what, man, I dig this show so much. As I've said before, the show very much is about, it's showing us the TOS world, the Star Trek universe that we're used to and understanding, but with a different font and a different style. But it's still very much steeped in that show, and we'll talk more about why as the review progresses. So let's jump into it. The episode starts with this memory. And it's a little girl who clearly we all believe it to be Una. She's dealing with an injury of some kind. It could be an infection, could be a broken bone, you can't really tell. And her parents are sitting there whispering about how to take her to a doctor, what to do with her. And then she starts to glow, much like how Una last season, when her body was healing that little disease that the ship had been infected by, began to glow. It was the time that Lon discovered when they had to get the antibodies from her body. And so it's one of those moments that you sit here and you go, oh wow. So now you flash forward to Pike. We find out last week, I had said that he was on leave. That's wrong. We find out he had taken leave in order to go track down an attorney for Una. So I believe more or less this is probably an overlap of some kind, but it seems like a little more time than the original 3 days they talked about has happened. And you find out he went to the Volterra Nebula. It's a place that has a hostile environment, but the Illyrians who live there have genetically modified themselves to be able to breathe the nebula, the air. So this way they don't get affected. Pike has to walk around with a breathing apparatus on, has a little air support and whatnot. I almost feel like they should have like more of a filtration system on it, that it could have recycled the bad air, but apparently it actually is like an air tank, oxygen tank, but on his hip. So you get into inside, and the receptionist is talking to someone on the phone, and she's like, yeah, he's not leaving, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what we're going to do. And Pike's just kind of sitting there in your average waiting room, just chilling, a little breather on. And she's like, I'm really sorry, but you're not going to be able to see you, I'm sorry. And he's like, that's okay, I'll wait. Oh, she's going to be busy, this and that. No, it's okay, I'll wait. And she's like, and then he's like, I got all day. And then his air thing starts beeping, and she goes, looks like maybe you don't. And he's like, that's what you think. And you're like, okay. And sure enough, he lets himself pass out. And the girl's like, oh my God. And she freaks out, and eventually he wakes up in Nira's office, and she does this cool little thing, the puff of air, which, by the way, the fact that any storyteller's taking the time to explore the actual logistics of that scenario, and they don't just have him without the thing on, and they save us from having, he doesn't have to wake up and be like, oh my God, how am I alive? What's going on? Oh, look, I can breathe in here. We don't get to have any of that. You see literally, he puffs a thing, and Nira walks up and says, you don't need the breathing apparatus anymore, you're going to be okay. It's all we needed explanation-wise. I'm in. And so I love, see, the thing is, when you see bad storytelling, as has happened in recent days with different things, all of a sudden you find good storytelling, and you're like, oh, it's so good storytelling. And it really is. No, it's legit. And so I love the fact that it's very consistent in the storytelling. Moving forward. So then you get this really, you find out he is really challenging her. And he's like, look, you're the best He calls her the civil rights attorney in the galaxy. I want to stop here for just a second. The old Star Trek, meaning TOS, the original series, it did a really good job of making the galaxy feel like a neighborhood, small. Yes, you had your big space things, and obviously they're on a 5-year mission and all that good stuff. But for me, the thing that really got me was that at any given time they could be, oh, we got to go over here to do some things, and we got to go to this place, and it's all very, it felt very like politics and things like that happen. Anyway, I know one of my friends said, as he's watching on Discord, and he's like, it's all very dry courtroom drama, and I feel him on that, and I do. But I'm digging the nuance of it. Because don't get me wrong, I'm sorry, I remember TOS also. The times they were in court and had court-martials were dry there also. Heck, just watch the trial of Khan in Space Seed, okay? That is just, it's all law, it's all this and that, it's all particulars. This, I thought, at least was interesting. Now, you gotta remember, we're a culture that has been watching legal courtroom dramas for a long, long time, and there's a difference between a good one and a bad one. I'm looking at you, She-Hulk. And so I thought I like the premise of all these things that they're introducing. When Pike gives Neera the information for the file, it's on a square, colorful data disk. It very much harkens back to the old ones from the old series. I'll put it on the screen. And the old ones, and also the same exact kind of computer panel. So when you see someone sliding it into the slot, it's on a slanted gray screen. Again, very much an honor and respect to TOS and the heritage of the series and sort of the design elements that happened. I mean, I feel like these are the design elements that if they had the technology and ability to do back in the 60s, they would have done. Because it keeps very faithful to all the design elements that were originally created. So again, big ups to them for that. Or as some of my other my colleague channels say, it's a thumbs up or a positive or a down or an up or down. I'm not a big those kind of nuance. I'm not a big fan of those kind of things. But at the end of the day, I get why they do it. So yes, thumbs up to me for using design elements that feel like original Star Trek. So then we get to a really interesting moment where Neera comes to visit Una, and finally. And Neera she's a civil rights lawyer, and I love the fact that they've made that they have that. The galaxy's small enough that they've got a civil rights attorney in the galaxy, and people know them, and they're, whether word on the whatever. And again, it's world building that I didn't realize we didn't have. And by that I just mean it's always been a Federation attorney or this person or that person. It's almost never been someone non-Starfleet. So having a non-Starfleet attorney, a litigator, because I don't know if they call them attorney, but having a litigator or counsel, if you will, I thought it was brilliant, and I really did like it, and I thought it was well worth the world building they put into it. They decide they're going to reject the prosecution's offer, which the prosecution in the very beginning offers Una. They offer her, hey, you'll be dishonorably discharged, and that's it. We'll move on. You will still be a free Federation citizen. You just won't be able to be in Starfleet. On its face, it looks like a good plan, but the truth is, it's not. It's not fair. It's not right, and you go into that further. So then we get to Pike's in his kitchen cooking, and his girlfriend, Captain Vitale, kicks the door down. Not really, but she stalks in, and she's like, they just rejected our offer. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. Because the truth is, she pulled a lot of strings. She really did. And it's really not a bad deal, considering they could have charged her with sedition and some other things. Which, by the way, now that it's going to get into her boss's hands, because they rejected everything, it's gonna come to that. And it does get nasty. And you'll see that in a minute. There's a point where Neera is talking to Una, and she says to her, we're going to do this my way this time. And so there's that implication that they have history. And you do get into what the history is further down the road. And you'll down the episode. When Neera arrives on board the Enterprise, because that's where she's kind of staging and whatnot from where she's been, La'an shows her to her quarters, which is actually Una's former quarters. We get a picture which sort of solidifies that original moment. We get confirmation that the little girl in the picture from the beginning is Luna. Is Una. This is her family. And that's when the Neera asks for a copy of Federation law, and she says, "No problem. I'll find you one as soon as I can." And then she says, she kind of implies she's gonna leave, but she doesn't. And so Neera's like, "What's up?" And she says to her, "I believe I want to help. I want to help her also, but I think the evidence may have been gathered illegally." And she's like, well, how do you know? And she's like, well, I really feel like I need to research more. And she's like, okay, fine, go figure it out and let me know. And so La'an is doing her best to try to help. Everybody's doing their best to try to help where they can. We then cut to a moment where you get to see the chief, the attorney for the prosecution, not Batal, but her boss, who's Vulcan and an admiral. And he's Admiral, I think it's Patal or something. Anyways, he's there, and he's in the lounge he's sitting across from Spock. Ortega and Mbenga are sitting at a table, and they're having a conversation. And Ortega is basically kind of doing this. She's doing this great imitation of Seth Green from the Italian Job. She's like, oh, hello, of course, Mr. Spock, and this is naturally only logical. And it's wonderful what she's doing. And that's when Mbenga starts pointing out. He's like, oh, you clearly don't have much experience with Vulcans. It's like, there is a lot of tension at that table. And she's like, what? What are you saying that I don't see? And in that moment, Spock stands up calmly, steps aside, and he's like, and then he composes himself, walks over to them and says, I'm sorry you had to witness my outburst. And she's like, and they're both like, we won't say anything. It's all good. And I'm just like, wow. And he's like, as one of my father's oldest former colleagues, he's like, he's one of the few that really just infuriates me. And again, I'm just very much, what I enjoyed, just like I enjoyed last week's episode where you get to see Spock pre who he will be, I like seeing kind of these moves or these shades of who he will eventually be, which is saying something very uncharacteristic in a very calm tone. And you're like, it's great. I love it. So seeing more of that kind of, again, just continuing that road for Ethan Peck, the road toward being who he's going to be. We then get this moment on the bridge where Uhura's at her station. Love the fact Uhura's on there. And La'an shows up and she's like, yeah, I need this. I'm helping kind of with this, find some stuff. And I'm also going to need any personal logs that mention Una. and Uhura's like, yeah, I can't do that. And La'an's like, what are you talking about? This and that. Because remember, when Uhura was a cadet, now she's a full-blown ensign. She's a communications officer. I don't know if she's the chief communications officer. She's currently a ship's communications officer. And she says to her, she's like, yeah, no, I can't break the rules like this. I can't. She stands firm. And what I love is not that because everyone's breaking rules left and right and this and that. It's the fact that Uhura, we are just like Spock's on his journey. Spock's on his journey to become the Spock we're going to know. Uhura's on her journey, becoming the Uhura we're going to know. The one who eventually will be Lieutenant Commander and strong, who is the focal point for communications, who understands how to reinterpret languages and everything else. And I just really love seeing the beginnings of who that character is going to be. So love to hear your comments and thoughts about sort of how you're seeing them grow one way or another. I think it's a great opportunity to see these characters begin to bud into the characters that we all love. Not that I don't love them already, because I frankly, seeing this level of groundwork that they're putting into the series, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. A lot of people are scared. They're like, oh, you're gonna rewrite this in TOS and whatever else. Look, I'm very much of the mindset that this is going to eventually become the show. I believe we're going to eventually see Kirk, and we'll roll into, historically speaking, another version of the show. And I'm down. I'm totally down for that. So then you get to see the beginnings of the trial of the century. Now the Enterprise has in their observation lounge, they have they have it on TV. On the screen, you get to see the court case and everything else, and it's very interesting. But oh my god, everyone's wearing dress uniforms, and the dress uniforms harken back to the old series. They have the gold trimming and everything else. It's more advanced than stuff, like it's along the whole thing. Also, they got the big giant gaudy glass looking medals or whatever, and again, all of it fits into the context of how the original series presented things, and I love that. You know, it's like the green wraparound uniform that Pike was wearing, the relaxed uniform for captains, and the red TMP, the motion picture style uniform that they revised for the last episode of last season, A Quality of Mercy. And yeah, man, it was I really enjoyed seeing those little those flourishes, if you will, and more canon type things. You get sightings of the eugenics wars and why things happened and why we don't do them the way they, what those things mean. And you understand the Federation is very much, I don't fault them. I do think they need to grow, and I do think the arguments, but I don't fault them. they came out of this horrific eugenics war where genetically modified super soldiers tried to take over the world. And actually, Nira, in her opening statement, literally talks about that. She says that from the ashes of the eugenics war, you guys built a utopia. And I think that's brilliant. What we have is, I'm okay with this. We're hanging our hat on the fact that the future of Earth and the future that Gene Roddenberry built is real. It's a utopia. It's genuine. But it's also built on trying to protect ourselves from the past. And that happens. And sometimes you put walls up and you build borders where they're unnecessary out of fear. And, at the end of the day, I think I like the message that's here is clear. And I think it's one that I really do appreciate. And we'll talk more at the very end a little bit about kind of what that means inside for us. And so for each of us, the first witness is called, and it's Admiral April. And as former captain of the Enterprise, he has inspired lots of people, and he's really helped. But he was the one who was Una's sponsor to Starfleet. And she asks him to do this and that. He's like, yeah, she's a wonderful op. And he begins to try to compliment her. And the prosecution's like, that's not the question. Would you have sponsored her application had you known? And he has to admit no. And she says, okay, no further questions. She sits down, and you see Nira gets up, and she begins to drill. She's like, oh, so this, and she jumps down his throat. And it was an uncomfortable exchange because it felt very cold. It felt like an indictment of Starfleet, an indictment of the Federation and its laws. And which it is. But at the same time, she's a very intelligent attorney. I'm telling you, she's very Sherlock Holmesian, and at the very end, very much like a heist film, they loop back around and explain her methodology and where she was going and how she got here, and you see it and you go, oh yeah, that makes total sense. So then you get this moment where they're right after this, and they warn her, you're not putting the Federation on. This is not a tribunal or a hearing for Admiral April. This is a hearing for Una Riley. So you better defend her and stop getting off topic. I mean, it's legit the way they're keeping her in line. And so then you have this moment where La'an brings Nira the law, and it's this big giant book. It's between scenes and whatnot, and she brings it to her, and she's talking to her, and she says, "Hey, did you ever get a chance to be found and track down who was responsible?" And there's this exchange where it comes out that she wasn't able to this and that, but she believes, and rightly so, Nira. And this is the first sign of Nira being a detective. Nira looks at her and she goes, "You're worried." She goes, "Your name's Noonien Singh. Are you related?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, I figured as much. Can you tell me about the situation, this and that? And she became angry, and she put it in her personal log. La'an feels like it's her fault that someone, and so she tells her, she's like, you don't understand. To access personal logs, to subpoena them, it's a massive process. So you didn't do this. Nobody got your logs and figured out what was going on. And so it's one of those times where you see what La'an's been going through. Then you find out La'an bears the genetic modifications of Khan. Now, before everybody goes freaking out, what? She's like Khan? She's like Khan? Understand something. And any ginger will tell you this. When you introduce other DNA into anything, modified, not, whatever, over time and decades and generations, that waters down. Maybe she has slightly more durable muscles or thin muscles. But she's got a little bit, for the most part, and maybe she lives healthy enough or well enough, her cells will sustain her longer than most people. So maybe instead of living to 100 years old, she lives to 120 or something. But at the end of the day, she's not like Khan. And then Nira has this wonderful thing where she tells her, she's like, you believe that you were angry. That anger is because other people put on you that you were bad because of this thing. One, you had no choice in it. It's not you were born this way. The other thing is what you do with it is your choice. That really resonated with me because I'm 6'7". In a world where most people who are large become bullies in school or whatever else, after being either ridiculed themselves or they turn on being bullied, whatever, I never did. I have this giant body. I could throw people around and not bust down walls, but at the end of the day, I choose to not do that. I choose to be a normal, reasonable, rational person. Okay, And I feel like that's a huge assertion, is that we're the ones who make those things happen. And that's huge, and that's important. So then you get to this place where, and I thought that, God, it was such a big moment for La'an. It really was. Una is finally called to the stand, and she's questioned. And Nira questions her in a way that I love, and again, all builds into the end, and the end result in the final judgment. And while she's questioning her, she asks her how she grew up, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And she's trying to find out that Una grew up on a Federation colony that was a colony of Illyrians and mixed humans who had been welcomed into the Federation provisionally, and they had to deny their genetic stuff. This is where you find out that the Illyrians, for them, genetic modification is part of their culture. It isn't. It's to give their children an opportunity to be able to go out, make them durable, whatever else. It isn't. It's not. It isn't like Khan. It isn't like the people who genetically modified to build conquerors. It was literally, it's a part of their culture. There's even ceremonies that their people have. So to be suddenly told, oh yeah, you have to, it would very much be like people of a particular faith, whether Jewish or otherwise, being told you can't be this way. You can't celebrate. You can't do this thing. Do it in quiet. Do it in silence, or else. That's fascism. That's Nazi Germany. And I feel like that's not I love the fact that they point those things out, because again, though the Federation is good meaning, the truth is it's scary for them what they've had to endure, and what they don't want to allow that opportunity for someone else who isn't the peace-loving Illyrians to come through, And so, anyways, it was neat to see that backstory. And then you find out the truth is that there was a bit of violence that broke out with a child who was discovered to be Illyrian, and ultimately that child was killed and died. And that child, that was Nira's cousin. You find out Nira is Una's childhood best friend. Probably even, there may or may not be more there. Other people may want to find more in the relationship, but I think that alone is special enough and powerful enough. And I feel like for her to suddenly, and then you go on to figure out that at some point she asked her, she's like, why did you join the Federation? And she says, ad Astra per Aspera, which basically translates to unto the stars with difficulty. The idea being that in the stars she would find salvation of some kind. And it blew my mind, because I was like, wow, that's so much. So that's or as Baby Note I would say, so much tea. And it was like, wow, bro, like that's deep, man. And she believed in it. The Federated Starfleet called to her its mission, its desire to see the stars, to explore, to be better, all the things. And it's wonder. And so it's huge. And you find out that when she was younger, there was an uprising, and eventually the people had to say, okay, we're going to split the population into Illyrians and non-Illyrians. And her family and her turned their back on everybody, and they left, and they went to the non-Illyrian side, and they hid because they could. Not every Illyrian can hide. Some of their modifications don't allow, are too visible. But for the most part, her and her family were able to hide who they were and in order to give her more opportunities, give her the opportunities to do great things, and to move forward in her life. And so at the very end of this, the Vulcan prosecutor gets up, and because it's all sides are done, the head guy, and he essentially talks about. He's like, since my co-counsel didn't ask the question, I'm going to ask directly, when did Captain Pike know? You find out Captain Pike knew 4 months before this, and he begins to paint the picture of a conspiracy to hide an Illyrian and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, he sounds so much like one of the, those people who would hunt Jews for the Holocaust. It was terrible. It was bad. I was like, I'm listening to him going, God, bro, you're a Vulcan, and you sound rough. And so then, and you see even Pike is like, oh man, it's rough. And everybody knows it looks bad. And then Nira, and he basically sums it up with saying, hey, this is the law. And the law is cold, it's dispassionate, the law is logical. As much as you want to lean on your emotions, the truth is you're here to abide by the law and say, well, what is right, what is law, what is this, what is that? And then Nira comes up, and she gives a closing that is amazing. She takes the law book she had, that La'an gave her, she puts it next to Captain Batal, and she asks Captain Batal to read Starfleet Regulation 8154. 8154 basically has three point criteria for someone requesting asylum. And as Captain Batal's reading it, they show you throughout from the this is that moment I said, this is that heist moment where in the heist movie they reveal to you how everything's been gone down, or the Sherlock Holmes moment where they reveal the ahas and how the evidence lined up. And sure enough, she outlines straight through, this is this is the other, this is how this went. And you see Una's testimony in her cut, and sure enough, basically it's the equivalent of, hey man, they're asking for asylum. And it's wonderfully poignant. And of course, and they come back and they absolutely, they say, this is not about everybody. We're not going to change the law. And which goes to answer a lot of people's questions about canon and whether or not, what about in the future when Julian Bashir, you find out he's in Deep Space Nine, is genetically modified, and what about that and this and that and the other. Those things are fine, and those things are still the way they are. They're canon, if you will. And I think that they say, but we're going to judge different. We're going to judge on the merits of this independent moment, this right here. And they say they exonerate her. They exonerate her of all charges, and she gets to return to her ship and return to her command. And watching the crew, Nira is just stupid amazing. And so you see Una transport back to the Enterprise, and everyone's there, and she tells her, thank you so much, I know we didn't change the law. And she says, no. And Nira says, this is a start. And then she leaves. And I love that. I think it was brilliant. And then you get this moment where everybody leaves except for Pike, and Pike hugs her. And Anson Mount does this moment in such a way. He plays it in such a way that you're like, oh, he could tell there's a breath that Pike was holding he didn't realize he was holding. It's just like, and he hugs her so tight, and she's like shocked, and it's really nice. And so yeah, there you are. There you go. Now you know. And if knowing is half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. So what's the know-it-all index for this episode? I'm going to give this episode, honestly, because I know we have higher heights to get to, I'm going to give this episode a 9. It's a solid 9 for me. I was very impressed. I was impressed by the courtroom drama. I was impressed by the continuity things that continue to keep original Trek, or TOS, the inspiration and point of origin for all of this. And they're honoring that legacy in a way that I really appreciate. I also love the story. Some people are like, why is it politicized? I'd love to have, you know what? I'd love to have that conversation. So comment below. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation about the politics within Star Trek. Not how, if all you're gonna do is bash stuff, do me a favor. It's okay. I don't need the comment. I would love to have a conversation though. Say, hey, this was really interesting. I like the approach, or I don't like the approach, and give good reasons. Love to have good, solid conversations. You guys have always been great here in the Know It All Nation about that kind of thing. But yeah, man. All right, guys. Well, I'm super excited to talk a little bit more as we go. So yeah, that's my take on that. That's my take on it, and I love to hear your comments. Love to hear your thoughts about the whole thing. All right, guys. Look forward to talking to you next week. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.